Dick, I know you've got a lot of Corvette experience. Talk about the difference between the GM chassis in general, the Cadillac, and then some of the things that you know, have come out of that.
Oh yeah, we can do that. Sure. Sure. These arms and that bracket locate the differential housing. It's held up by the airbags in the rear, and they're located by these trailing arms coming from the frame brackets to the housing itself. And this is the housing here. And that locates. There's also a sway bar in the back, and I believe one lateral link that holds that in place. And it's amazing how parallel a lot of these cars were, because General Motors was really into making money and just giving you a comfortable ride. They weren't really pushing the envelope on the performance, ride quality. So they used pretty much all the same basic ideas from the mid-late 40s clear up into the 60s. And that included the Corvette, because much of these ideas were used with the original 1953 Corvette. Because the 53 Corvette was actually the chassis and the frame of a standard Chevrolet 1949. So they used all of that on the Corvette right off of the 49 Chevrolet.
Interesting.
Yeah, and well, that was save money and get the thing going. See, they wanted that car out on the road. They were trying to recapture the youth market and some of the excitement they'd lost with the old stodgy square six-cylinder cars that they'd been selling that pretty much were not moving anymore. So really some great innovative people got together and decided we got to do something about this. So this is one of the creative ideas. Let's go to Italy and get this body completed to really enhance this chassis. I believe they were going to build 10 or 12 of them. I'm not sure, but extremely expensive. And I do think they sold a few. I'm not too sure about that. But they finally dropped this form of chassis in the 70s. They kept pretty much all of it together up until the 70s. And then they started to go to monocoque automobiles and tube frames and so on, which was pretty much just beginning of the state of the art of their part of the automobile business.
And then what are we using today?
Today, well, what we're using today from that is, of course, a lot of the ideas, but virtually none of the hardware. They've gone to a monocoque. They've gone to space frames. They're using an entirely different system of suspension control. They use, of course, the lateral control arm, but then the upper arm is just a shock and a spring. So it's not really as involved as something like this. A lot cheaper. I think that was it wasn't so much that it handled any better, but it rode pretty well, but it was much less expensive to build.
Yeah, because the airbags were extremely expensive.
Oh, in this car and a lot of these, the airbag was prohibitive. It was so expensive. So they pretty well got away from that right at the end of this project. Then they went to springs, and then with the Cadillacs and with the Corvettes, they started to go to the plastic springs. You know, the fiberglass lateral springs they used on almost all of their cars, which was very inexpensive and very light. So they took a lot of the weight out of the suspension with that. And that they used a parallel in the Camaros and the Cadillacs and Corvettes and so on. Yeah, they were very, very good at that.
What about from a drivetrain perspective? What improvements have we seen over the years?
Well, I think what they were trying to do was put themselves out of business. So what they did was make everything the same. I think there was a couple of gentlemen that ran the General Motors that decided, and I heard them say this at the car show, the public will buy anything we build. So they stopped developing, they stopped innovating. All the cars, if you remember, they all looked the same in the 70s and early 80s. You couldn't tell them apart. Whether it was Buick or Cadillac, they had the same engines. So they were just trying to make money. And boy, they did that, but they went from 51% market share down to about 18. But they made a lot of money in the meantime. Of course, they've just about lost the entire car market.
And it's taken them up until the last few years to actually get it back.
That's true, that's true. To recover, they have got some real innovative, interesting, creative engineers and designers. And I've been very fortunate to know most of them. And those gentlemen they're possessed. They're dedicated to making it better and right. And if you look at some of the new designs and the new features, going back to front engine rear drive cars again, going back to port injection, going to a lot of less unsprung weight, you know. So the car has, well, it had to turn around. It had to turn around. Or the Japanese, everybody would have killed it. So they had to get rid of the head of General Motors and start putting innovative people in. Because he just wanted to make money. He didn't care if they built any more cars or not. Which it was incredible to me. I mean, for a company that size, how could the board of the directors possibly put up with that? And I knew
a company that had such huge market share for so long just to let that fall.
Well, but it went to their head. The reason that they thought they could do anything is exactly what I said. They told themselves that the public would buy anything they built. So they made everything the same, all looked the same. They just called it a Buick and an Oldsmobile and a Cadillac and a Chevrolet. And in fact, they were so much the same. They were even using, people finally in arms came forward and said, you're not putting a Chevy motor in my Buick, or what, you know. So they had to, you know, by that kind of effort, they had to stop doing it. And it was too bad they lost that kind of creativity, but boy, they bought themselves in, I'll tell you. They finally recovered, though, in my opinion, some of the new Cadillacs and you know, and the new Corvettes and the Camaros and the rest of them are absolutely beautiful, and they're state-of-the-art. The Corvette is now a world-class sports car. It's not just local, it's world-class. The Cadillac is held in high esteem all over the world. So they're turning it around, but it took some incredibly sharp, young, innovative engineering and styling people to do it.
What was the idea behind sending this chassis over to Italy and having the work done over there and then sent back?
The reason that they wanted this built in Italy was that kind of creativity, that difference. Because they were starting to get into a rut, but a lot of their designers and a lot of their engineers had always followed the Italians. If you'll notice on a lot of the cars, they really look Italianized. And so when it came to doing something very special, they felt real comfortable in getting together. And they did a few Corvettes, by the way, through the Italian groups. So they wanted to get creative. They went over to Italy and had them do something like this, and they could brag about it. It's an Italian car, just like the Ferrari, and you know, on and on. So that was the whole point of doing it. Well, it's going together really well. The parts are coming together. They're all what we didn't have refurbished. We got new. And all the bushings are new. The differential will be correct. The engine is still a little bit a ways away from getting it done, but by the time we get all of this together and on the ground, that'll be a perfect time to get this engine installed. And that's the way they built these. Was you had everything. You had the gas tank, the engine, drive line, all the suspension, everything, and then you just put the body on it. And made it so much easier because you can get at all the wiring and all the hoses and all the fuel lines and brake lines and get all that done, and you just put the body on it. And that made a lot of sense. Joe, you're doing great.
Going to get, huh?
Oh, yeah.
So the brackets go in, and then what's the next step?
After we get all the brackets located, then we're going to install the gears and axles and the differential,
Yep.
and then set that in as one piece.
So it'll all be assembled. The pumpkin, the gears, the axles, all of that will be all put together. Are you going to also put the, oh yes, you'll have to, put the backer plates on it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the brakes and so on. And then that'll go right up underneath. Then from then you start putting the hoses and wires and fuel tank and all the rest of the auxiliaries on it. It's kind of interesting. You don't very often get a chance to see something go right from the ground up. Because usually you see it with bits and pieces. You put brakes on it. You know, you work on the engine or you do this or that. But to actually see one built from the ground up is really interesting.
So is this kind of how they did it in Italy?
Oh, yeah.
Did they send the rolling chassis over there?
Yes. No, they sent a complete chassis. You know, and however many they shipped. And then they went ahead and built the bodies. Because a lot of the basics on these bodies are pretty much kept the same, like the door windows and things like that. So they didn't have to completely reinvent the wheel and the interior. But when it came to all the body panels, they did all of that. So.